The morning alarm echoed through the corridors of Kepler Station's educational complex, a sound that had become as familiar to Marcus Chen as his own heartbeat. Students from dozens of species shuffled toward their classrooms, their various forms of locomotion creating a symphony of clicks, padding feet, and the occasional flutter of wings. Marcus adjusted his simple human clothing and headed toward advanced xenobiology, unaware that today would change everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the galaxy. The classroom buzzed with nervous energy. Today marked the beginning of practical field studies where students would demonstrate their species' natural abilities in real-world scenarios. Marcus had been dreading this day for months. While his Valkyrian classmate could phase through solid matter and his Zephyrian friend could manipulate electromagnetic fields with her mind, Marcus was just human. No special powers, no natural weapons, no extraordinary senses that could detect danger from miles away. Professor Krell, a towering insectoid with compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once, entered the room with his usual authoritative presence. Behind him walked something that made every student in the room freeze. It was a shadow maw, one of the most feared predators in known space. Standing 8 feet tall with obsidian black exoskeleton plates covering its muscular frame, the creature moved with deadly grace. Its 6 eyes glowed amber in the artificial light, each one capable of tracking independent targets. Razor-sharp claws extended from its 4 arms, and its mandibles clicked ominously as it surveyed the classroom. "Students," Professor Krell announced, his translator converting his chittering speech into standard galactic, "meet subject Omega-7. This shadow maw has been specially conditioned for educational purposes and fitted with behavioral inhibitors. However, I must stress that it remains extremely dangerous." The shadow maw's head turned slowly, examining each student with predatory interest. When its gaze fell upon the reptilian saurians, they instinctively puffed up their frills in a defensive display. The crystalline Lithians dimmed their natural luminescence, trying to appear less noticeable. Even the usually confident Valkyrians seemed to shrink into themselves. "Your assignment," Professor Krell continued, apparently oblivious to the terror permeating the room, "is simple in concept but challenging in execution. You must survive a 10-minute encounter with Subject Omega-7 in our controlled environment chamber. You may use any natural abilities your species possesses, but no external tools or weapons. This exercise will test your instincts, natural defenses, and ability to think under pressure." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He watched as his classmates nervously discussed their strategies. Zix, a Valkyrian with the ability to phase through solid matter, seemed confident. "I'll just become incorporeal," she whispered to her friend. "It can't hurt what it can't touch." Thane, a massive Ursoid whose species was known for their incredible strength and natural armor-like fur, flexed his clawed hands. "Brute force has served my people well for millennia," he rumbled. "I'll stand my ground." As the class filed toward the testing chamber, Marcus found himself falling behind. What could he possibly do against a creature that had evolved to be the perfect predator? Humans had no natural armor, no energy projection abilities, no telepathic powers. They were soft, relatively weak, and had only basic senses compared to most galactic species. In academic discussions, humans were often cited as an example of how intelligence alone could compensate for physical inadequacy. But intelligence wouldn't help him dodge claws that could slice through steel. The testing chamber was a sterile white room about 30 feet square, equipped with various obstacles and hiding spots. Multiple cameras recorded every angle, and the walls were lined with force field generators that would activate if the shadow maw's behavioral inhibitors failed. Professor Krell explained that the inhibitors would prevent the creature from delivering fatal blows, but students could still be seriously injured. Zix went first, her confidence evident as she stepped into the chamber. The Shadow Maw was released from its containment tube and immediately focused on her with laser intensity. As it lunged forward with frightening speed, Zix phased out of existence, becoming a translucent, ghost-like form. The creature's claws passed harmlessly through her, and she maintained her incorporeal state for the full 10 minutes, while the frustrated predator searched for something solid to attack. Thane's approach was entirely different. When the Ursoid entered the chamber, he planted himself in the center of the room and roared a challenge that shook the reinforced walls. The Shadow Maw accepted the invitation, charging forward and engaging in what could only be described as a supernatural wrestling match. Thane's species had evolved on a world where everything wanted to eat them, and it showed. His thick fur deflected the creature's claws, and his own strength was enough to grapple with the predator. Though he accumulated several cuts and bruises, he held his ground for the required time. One by one, students demonstrated their natural gifts. The aquatic Pelagians used their bioelectric discharge to keep the creature at bay. The avian Skyders took to the air, staying just out of reach of the jumping predator. The crystalline Lithians created blinding light displays that confused and disoriented their opponent. Then it was Marcus's turn. As he stepped into the chamber, he felt every eye in the observation area focused on him. His classmates leaned forward with a mixture of curiosity and pity. Some had already begun composing the sympathetic messages they would send to his family. The Shadow Maw, fresh from its encounters with the other students, turned its attention to this new prey. Its 6 eyes focused on Marcus with what seemed like anticipation, as if it sensed something different about this particular target. The release buzzer sounded, and the Shadow Maw moved toward Marcus with predatory confidence. But something unexpected happened. Instead of running, hiding, or attempting to fight, Marcus stood perfectly still in the center of the chamber. His breathing slowed and became rhythmic. His eyes never left the approaching predator, but his gaze held something that no one in the observation room had seen before. The Shadow Maw slowed its approach, its head tilting slightly in what almost looked like confusion. Its amber eyes narrowed as it studied this strange creature that showed neither fear nor aggression, but something else entirely. Something that spoke to instincts far older than civilization. Marcus took a single, deliberate step forward. The Shadow Maw stopped completely, its massive form going rigid. For the first time since the exercise had begun, the creature looked uncertain. Its 6 eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape route, behavior that Professor Krell had never documented in his decades of studying the species. In the observation room, the silence was deafening. Students who had been preparing to witness their human classmates' inevitable defeat found themselves watching something unprecedented. The most feared predator in known space was backing away from a species that everyone considered physically inferior. Marcus took another step forward, his movements fluid and purposeful. The Shadow Maw retreated further, its massive claws scraping against the chamber floor as it sought distance from this incomprehensible threat. What none of the observers understood, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that they were witnessing something that had once ruled Earth's ancient landscapes. Hidden beneath human civilization and technology lay the genetic memory of the apex predator that had conquered an entire planet. Every monster that had ever existed in human nightmares was based on creatures that their ancestors had successfully hunted to extinction. The Shadow Maw, with all its evolved predatory instincts, recognized something in Marcus that superseded billions of years of evolution. It saw the descendant of the species that had looked at every dangerous creature on their world and asked not, "How do I avoid it?" but, "How do I kill it?" The 10 minutes felt like an eternity, with Marcus slowly advancing and the Shadow Maw continuously retreating until it pressed itself against the far wall of the chamber. When the completion buzzer finally sounded, the creature practically launched itself back into its containment tube. Eager to escape the presence of something it couldn't understand, but instinctively feared. As Marcus exited the chamber, he was met with absolute silence. Professor Krell's compound eyes were fixed on his readings, his mandibles clicking rapidly in what the class had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. The other students stared at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time, their expressions ranging from confusion to something approaching awe. "Impossible," Professor Krell finally managed to say, his translator struggling with the rapid pace of his speech. "The readings show that subject Omega-7 exhibited classic submissive behavior patterns. This is unprecedented in our research." Marcus shrugged, appearing almost as confused as everyone else. "I just looked at it," he said simply. "I mean, really looked at it. Like my dad taught me to look at things when we went hunting back home." The word hunting sent a ripple through the classroom. Most galactic species had evolved beyond the need for predation, having developed agriculture, energy absorption, or synthetic nutrition millions of years ago. The concept of actively tracking and killing other creatures for survival was so foreign that it was barely discussed in xenobiology courses, except as an extinct behavioral pattern. But as Marcus returned to his seat, every student in the class began to understand that they had fundamentally misunderstood what humans actually were. They had seen the technology, the art, the philosophy, and the diplomacy. They had assumed that these traits represented the totality of human nature. They had never considered that those same hands that created beautiful music and complex mathematics had once strangled predators in the darkness. They had never imagined that those same eyes that gazed at stars and dreamed of peace had once tracked prey across continents. They had never understood that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their intelligence or their tools. It was that they had never stopped being hunters. Word of Marcus's encounter with the Shadow Maw spread through Kepler Station like wildfire. Within hours, the video recordings were being analyzed by xenobiologists across 3 different sectors. The footage showed something that challenged fundamental assumptions about human capabilities and, more disturbingly, about the nature of predation itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's head of human studies, sat in her office reviewing the recordings for the dozenth time. As one of the few human researchers on Kepler Station, she had dedicated her career to helping other species understand human psychology and behavior. But watching Marcus face down the Shadow Maw, she realized there were aspects of her own species she had never fully grasped. "Computer, slow playback to quarter speed and focus on the subject's biometric readings," she commanded. The holographic display showed Marcus's vital signs during the encounter. What should have been indicators of stress, fear, or adrenaline response instead showed something remarkable. His heart rate had actually decreased as he approached the Shadow Maw. His breathing became deeper and more controlled. His brain patterns showed increased activity in regions associated with focus and spatial awareness, while areas linked to fear response remained almost dormant. A chime indicated someone requesting entry to her office. "Come in," Dr. Vasquez called, not looking away from the data. Professor Krell entered, his usually steady gait replaced by nervous, jerky movements. His compound eyes were dim, and his mandibles clicked continuously, a sign of deep disturbance among his species. "Dr. Vasquez," he began, his translator rendering his agitated chittering into formal galactic standard. "I require your assistance in understanding what occurred in my classroom today. The behavioral patterns exhibited by both the human student and subject Omega-7 are unprecedented." Dr. Vasquez gestured to a chair designed for insectoid physiology. "I've been reviewing the data myself, Professor. What specific aspects are troubling you?" Krell's head tilted, a gesture that indicated serious consideration among his people. "The Shadow Maw is apex predation incarnate. My species evolved on the same world as an earlier variant of these creatures. For millions of years, they were the ultimate expression of hunting efficiency. They fear nothing, because they have never needed to fear anything." He paused, his mandibles going still for a moment before continuing. "Until today, I believe this to be a universal constant. Yet your human student induced submission behaviors that we have never documented. Not just avoidance, Dr. Vasquez. Active submission. The creature recognized a superior predator. Dr. Vasquez felt a chill run down her spine. That's impossible. Humans don't have any physical advantages over a shadow maw. We're smaller, weaker, slower. Perhaps, Krell interrupted. We have been measuring the wrong attributes. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert echoing through the station's communications system. All personnel to emergency stations. We have a Code Silver situation in Docking Bay 7. Repeat, Code Silver in Docking Bay 7. Code Silver meant escaped dangerous fauna. Dr. Vasquez and Professor Krell exchanged alarmed looks before rushing toward the nearest transport tube. As they traveled through the station's corridors, they passed groups of beings from dozens of different species, all showing signs of panic and confusion. Docking Bay 7 was in chaos when they arrived. Security teams from multiple species had formed a perimeter around a cargo transport, but they seemed hesitant to approach. Through the crowd, Dr. Vasquez could see what had everyone terrified. A pack of void stalkers had somehow escaped containment during a research transfer. Unlike the controlled environment with the single shadow maw, this was a genuine emergency. Void stalkers were pack hunters from the dark side of Rigel 7, creatures that had evolved in perpetual darkness and hunted through echolocation and pheromone tracking. Their bodies were built for speed and stealth, with retractable claws that could slice through most known materials and sensory organs, so advanced they could track a target's fear hormones from miles away. 6 of them had escaped, and they were currently stalking through the cargo area of the docking bay, their movements coordinated with the precision that only came from millions of years of pack hunting evolution. Station security was equipped to handle individual threats or minor containment breaches, but facing a coordinated pack of apex predators was beyond their capabilities. "We need to evacuate this entire section," the security chief, a heavily armored Carathian, was saying into his communicator. "These creatures can phase through most energy barriers, and our stun weapons aren't effective against their nervous systems." Dr. Vasquez was about to suggest they contact the research team that had been transporting the creatures when she spotted a familiar figure pushing through the crowd. Marcus Chen was making his way toward the security perimeter, his face showing the same calm focus she had seen in the classroom recordings. "Marcus, stop!" she called out, but he either didn't hear her or chose to ignore the command. The young human approached the security chief with determined steps. "Sir, I'd like to volunteer to help with the containment." The Carathian's 4 eyes focused on Marcus with what could only be described as disbelief. "Citizen, this is a military operation. We're dealing with Class A predators. You need to evacuate with the other civilians." Marcus shook his head. "With respect, sir, your current approach isn't working. These creatures are pack hunters. They're coordinating their movements and using your fear responses to herd you exactly where they want you. You're thinking like prey." Before the security chief could respond, one of the Void Stalkers emerged from behind a cargo container, its sleek black form moving with liquid grace. It had been stalking the security team from their blind spot, and now it was positioning itself for an attack on the exposed flank. Marcus turned toward the creature, and Dr. Vasquez watched in amazement as the same transformation she had seen in the classroom recordings began to occur. His posture shifted subtly, becoming lower and more balanced. His movements became economical and purposeful. Most importantly, his eyes changed. They became the eyes of something that had never known what it meant to be hunted. The Void Stalker stopped its advance, its head tilting in confusion. These creatures relied on reading the fear responses of their prey, using terror as a tracking mechanism. But Marcus wasn't broadcasting fear. Instead, he was projecting something that made the creature's instincts scream warnings. "Back away slowly," Marcus said quietly to the security team. never taking his eyes off the Void Stalker. "Don't make sudden movements, but don't show submission either. These things hunt by following escape patterns." As the security team carefully repositioned themselves, Marcus began walking toward the Void Stalker. Not quickly, not aggressively, but with the steady, inevitable advance of something that had already decided how this encounter was going to end. The creature retreated, its sleek form pressing lower to the ground. It let out a series of high-pitched calls, and Dr. Vasquez realized it was calling for its packmates, but instead of summoning them to attack, it was warning them of danger. Within moments, all 6 Void Stalkers had emerged from their hiding places, but not to attack. They grouped together near the far end of the docking bay, their bodies' language showing clear signs of agitation and uncertainty. Marcus continued his approach, and the pack continued to retreat until they had backed themselves into a corner. "Now," Marcus said calmly to the security team, "you can activate your containment fields. They won't try to phase through them while they're focused on me." The security chief activated the emergency containment protocols, and energy barriers sprang up around the huddled pack of predators. The Void Stalkers barely seemed to notice the barriers activating, too focused on the threat that their instincts were screaming was far more dangerous than any artificial prison. As the immediate crisis passed, Dr. Vasquez found herself studying Marcus with new eyes. During the entire encounter, he had shown no signs of stress or fear. His breathing had remained steady, his movements controlled and deliberate. He had faced down 6 of the most dangerous predators in known space, as if he was dealing with mildly annoying pets. "How did you know they would react that way?" she asked him as the security team finished securing the area. Marcus shrugged, seeming genuinely puzzled by the question. "They're just animals, Dr. Vasquez. Smart animals, sure, but still animals. My grandfather used to take me hunting when I was little. He always said that everything in nature understands the hierarchy of predators. You just have to show them where you fit in that hierarchy." Professor Krell approached them, his entire posture showing the intense focus that indicated deep thought among his species. "Student Chen, what exactly did your grandfather hunt?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Depends on the season. Deer, elk, sometimes bear if there were problem animals near the settlements. He grew up in the old territories on Earth before the conservation reforms. Said his family had been hunters for generations, going back to when humans first started using tools." The implications of that statement hung in the air like a thunderbolt. Dr. Vasquez felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. Humans had developed tool use and hunting strategies tens of thousands of years before most galactic species had even developed basic intelligence. They had spent millennia perfecting the art of tracking, stalking, and killing creatures that were faster, stronger, and better armed than they were. While other species had evolved specialized physical abilities, humans had evolved something far more dangerous: the ability to outthink, outplan, and outpatience any other creature on their world. They had become the ultimate persistence predators, capable of tracking prey across vast distances and hunting them to exhaustion through sheer determination and intelligence. "Professor Krell," Dr. Vasquez said slowly, "I think we need to revise some of our classifications in the Galactic Species Database." The insectoid academic nodded gravely. "Indeed. We have been categorizing humans based on their technological achievements and cultural development, but perhaps we have been ignoring the most crucial aspect of their evolution." As they watched Marcus walk away, chatting casually with other students, as if he hadn't just faced down a pack of apex predators, both researchers realized they were looking at something that challenged the fundamental understanding of what humanity represented in the galaxy. They had been so focused on human art, philosophy, and technology that they had never considered the darker truth. Every human was the descendant of the most successful hunters their planet had ever produced. Every human carried in their genes the memory of creatures that had looked at a world full of predators and had methodically hunted every single one of them into submission or extinction. The universe was about to learn that humans hadn't conquered their world through superior technology or physical prowess. They had conquered it through the simple, terrifying persistence of creatures that never stopped hunting until everything else learned to fear them. 3 weeks after the incident in Docking Bay 7, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session on Kepler Station. Representatives from 43 different species had arrived to witness what was being called the Human Predator Evaluation. The events involving Marcus Chen had sent shockwaves through the academic and political communities, forcing a fundamental re-examination of humanity's place in galactic society. Marcus sat in a small preparation room adjacent to the main council chamber, still struggling to understand why his normal behavior had caused such an enormous controversy. Dr. Vasquez sat across from him, reviewing notes on her datapad while trying to prepare him for what was about to happen. "Remember, Marcus, they're going to ask you to demonstrate your abilities again," she said, not looking up from her device. "Some of the council members are having difficulty accepting that humans possess natural predatory instincts that surpass those of known apex predators." Marcus fidgeted in his chair. "But I didn't do anything special. I just looked at those animals the way my grandfather taught me. I don't understand why everyone is making such a big deal about it." Dr. Vasquez finally looked up, and Marcus was surprised to see something that might have been fear in her eyes. "Marcus, over the past 3 weeks, we've conducted tests with 37 different predator species. Every single one has shown submission responses when confronted by humans exhibiting what we're calling predator state behavior. We've had to completely revise our understanding of the galactic food chain." Before Marcus could respond, the chamber doors opened and Professor Krell entered, followed by a being that Marcus had never seen before. It stood nearly 10 feet tall, with crystalline skin that refracted light into prismatic patterns. Its movements were fluid and precise, suggesting incredible physical control. "Student Chen," Professor Krell began, his mandibles clicking nervously, "may I present Council Prime Zethrin of the Luminary Collective. The Prime has requested to speak with you personally before the formal evaluation begins." The crystalline being regarded Marcus with eyes that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonic frequencies that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Young human," Prime Zethrin said, "your species has been part of our galactic community for less than 2 centuries. In that time, you have been classified as a peaceful, technologically developing race with minimal physical capabilities, yet recent events suggest this classification may be fundamentally flawed." Marcus felt uncomfortable under the alien's intense gaze. "Sir, I think there might be some misunderstanding. I'm not special or anything. Any human could probably do what I did if they grew up learning how to hunt." The Prime's crystalline features shifted into what might have been surprise. "Any human? Are you suggesting that these abilities are common among your species?" Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. "Prime Zethrin, our preliminary research suggests that while modern human society has suppressed predatory behaviors through cultural development, the underlying instincts remain intact. It appears that humans retain genetic memories and behavioral patterns from their evolutionary past as persistence hunters." The Prime was quiet for a long moment, its crystalline form dimming and brightening as if processing complex thoughts. "This has profound implications for galactic security protocols. We must understand the full extent of these capabilities." 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself standing in the largest testing facility on Kepler Station. The council chamber had been modified to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, each equipped with advanced recording equipment and biometric scanners. The air hummed with nervous energy as beings who normally prided themselves on their logical, scientific approaches to problems prepared to witness something that challenged their fundamental understanding of predation. For today's evaluation, announced Council Prime Zethrin, we have prepared 3 separate scenarios of increasing difficulty. Student Chen will face predators representing different hunting methodologies: ambush predation, pack hunting, and territorial dominance. The first chamber contained a nebula phantom, a creature from the gas giant systems that hunted through camouflage and sudden strikes. Its body could shift its molecular density, allowing it to appear as harmless mist until it materialized into solid form to attack. The creature was considered so dangerous that most species required specialized equipment and teams to safely contain one. Marcus entered the chamber while hundreds of eyes watched from the observation areas. The nebula phantom was invisible somewhere in the room, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But Marcus didn't seem concerned with trying to locate it. Instead, he stood in the center of the chamber and closed his eyes. "What is he doing?" whispered a Aquarian representative to her colleague. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring from the control room, watched Marcus's biometric readings with fascination. "He's not trying to find the predator," she realized. "He's making himself into bait." Marcus opened his eyes and began walking slowly around the chamber, his movements deliberate and controlled. To the observers, it looked like he was making himself an easy target. But something else was happening. The nebula phantom, despite having a perfect opportunity for an ambush strike, remained hidden in its mist form. Minutes passed. The creature should have attacked by now, but instead it continued to lurk at the edges of the chamber. Finally, Marcus stopped walking and looked directly at a section of apparently empty air. "I can smell your fear," he said quietly. The effect was immediate. The nebula phantom materialized at the far end of the chamber, its usually confident form pressed low against the wall. Its natural hunting instincts were screaming at it to flee from something it couldn't understand but recognized as a superior predator. The second test involved a pack of void runners, creatures similar to Earth wolves, but adapted for hunting in zero-gravity environments. They were known for their incredible coordination and ability to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. When the pack was released into the chamber, they immediately began circling Marcus in a complex pattern designed to confuse and disorient their prey. But Marcus didn't track their movements frantically like most beings would. Instead, he focused on the pack leader, a scarred female with distinctive markings. As she coordinated the pack's movements, Marcus began matching her pace, walking in the same rhythm, breathing at the same intervals. The pack stopped circling. The leader's ears flattened against her head as she realized that somehow this strange bipedal creature had inserted itself into the pack's communication patterns. More disturbing, it was doing so with the confidence of something that belonged at the top of the hierarchy. One by one, the void runners lowered themselves to the ground in submissive postures. The pack leader approached Marcus slowly, her head low, and actually nuzzled his outstretched hand before retreating to join her packmates. The final test was the most challenging. A Titan mauler, one of the largest predators in known space, was released into an expanded chamber. Standing 15 feet tall with armor-like plates covering its massive frame, the creature was territorial dominance incarnate. Its species had evolved on high-gravity worlds where only the strongest survived, and they had never encountered anything they couldn't physically dominate. When Marcus entered the chamber, the Titan mauler immediately charged, intending to establish dominance through a display of overwhelming force. But instead of running or trying to dodge, Marcus did something that defied all logical survival instincts. He charged back. Not with any hope of physical victory, but with the absolute confidence of a creature that had never accepted the concept of surrender. The Titan mauler stopped its charge mere feet from impact, confused by this unprecedented response. In its evolutionary history, smaller creatures always fled from larger ones. This behavior was so far outside its experiential framework that it couldn't process what was happening. Marcus continued his advance, and the massive predator actually took a step backward, then another. For the first time in its species' evolutionary history, a titan mauler was retreating from a creature a fraction of its size. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were frantically analyzing readings, comparing data, and trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Some were calling for immediate security upgrades. Others were demanding restrictions on human movement throughout the galaxy. Prime Zethrin called for order, its crystalline form blazing with light to capture attention. The implications of what we have witnessed cannot be overstated. We have documented the submission of apex predators to a species we previously classified as physically inferior. This suggests that our understanding of predation hierarchy is fundamentally flawed. Dr. Vasquez stood to address the council. Honorable representatives, I believe we've been making a critical error in our classification systems. We've been focusing on individual physical capabilities while ignoring behavioral and psychological factors. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a world filled with creatures that were individually superior in every physical measure. They survived not by being stronger or faster, but by being more determined, more intelligent, and more ruthless in their pursuit of survival. She gestured toward Marcus, who stood calmly despite being the center of galactic attention. Every human carries the genetic memory of ancestors who looked at creatures like saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and cave bears, and decided to hunt them to extinction. They didn't do this through superior physical prowess, but through the simple, terrifying persistence of a species that never learned when to quit. A representative from the Pacifist Coalition, a floating jellyfish-like being, pulsed with agitated colors. Are you suggesting that humans are inherently dangerous to galactic peace? Marcus stepped forward before Dr. Vasquez could respond. No, sir, he said respectfully. I think what Dr. Vasquez is trying to explain is that humans learned how to be the ultimate predators, but we also learned how to choose not to be. We could have stayed hunters forever, but we decided to build civilizations instead. We could have conquered other species, but we chose to cooperate with them. He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. The same instincts that let us hunt down every dangerous creature on our world also let us protect the things we care about. We're not dangerous because we're predators. We're safe because we're predators who chose to be something else. The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. Here was a species that possessed the instinctive ability to dominate any other life form they encountered, but had voluntarily developed philosophical and ethical systems that prevented them from using those abilities for conquest. Prime Zethrin's form brightened with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as approval. Perhaps, the Prime said slowly, humanity's greatest strength is not that they became the ultimate predators, but that they became ultimate predators who chose to use their abilities in service of peace. As the council session concluded, Marcus reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. 3 weeks ago, he had been just another student worried about passing his xenobiology class. Now he was apparently a representative of his entire species' evolutionary heritage. But as he watched the various alien representatives discussing humanity's role in galactic society, he realized something important. The galaxy was full of species that had evolved amazing abilities, incredible technologies, and sophisticated cultures. But humanity brought something unique to the cosmic community. The perspective of creatures who had been the most dangerous thing on their world, but had chosen to be something better. In a universe full of wonders, perhaps humanity's greatest contribution wasn't their technology, their art, or their philosophy. Perhaps it was the simple, profound truth that even apex predators could choose compassion over conquest, cooperation over dominance, and peace over the hunt. The hunter had indeed entered the classroom, But what left everyone stunned wasn't the predator that humanity could be, but the choice they made not to be one.